It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the Morning Star Drive, you know.
Hey guys, how's it going? It's Tuesday, May 3rd, and this is the Morning Star Drive on 117.8. We're on YouTube, so make sure to subscribe, follow us on SoundCloud, and make sure to support us on Patreon. So what is happening on this fabulous Tuesday? We've got current news from around the world, looking into the book of Numbers, and thoughts of the week on leadership, especially the second generation. All right, everyone. How are you doing? Monday is in the books. Yes, the hardest day of the week, just getting things started. It's done, so we're right in the middle of the week. Well, not in the middle, but we're getting into the middle of the week, and I hope you guys are just going to enjoy another Tuesday together with us here on the Morning Star Drive. Super thankful for all of you guys here, and keep liking, commenting. Want to hear from you guys and see how you're doing. Great to see new faces subscribing to the Morning Star Drive and to Espresso with Sky, and I hope that all of us here, especially on this channel only for Pravi members, this one here, let's make sure we build the community more than anything else. This is just for us, people speaking English in the English-speaking Providence community, and we'd love to hear who you are, where you're from. Just post in the comments. I am someone who will basically reply to every single comment out there. I will. It's the same thing with what do you call it? With the Espresso with Sky, there's like 50 comments. I'll do all 50 just to interact with the audience and such and just see what's going on in their minds. So would love to hear from you. All right. So today, right now, actually is my final day in Houston. I will be flying out today in the afternoon, which is just in a few hours. So I had to make sure to get this podcast done before I headed out. I am super thankful to God for giving me this vacation 10 days, spending time with members, getting that healing time with baby Oliver. I had a great time, just going to cafes, drinking coffee, but the most important part was interacting with members, whether it was through sports, going to eat together, doing paintball, if you guys saw that on my Instagram. It was just an amazing, amazing trip for me. And you know what? For me, this is a place that I would definitely want to move to too. Like, of course, everything is about visas and stuff like that. But I would love to move to this place also, just because it's not just the place, because it's nice and hot. It doesn't get really too cold. I'm not one to like the cold weather. I don't even mind humidity. That's why I like Malaysia. I like Houston. Like, there's a bunch of places I just really like, and I can see myself living there. But of course, there's just so many logistics. But it gives me a lot of options and things to think about as I kind of look at my future and where I want to go next, right? So today I will be in the airport almost all day. Well, not all day, but I'll be there from like 12:30, 1 p.m. And then I won't even get to Vancouver until 9 p.m. So that's like 8 hours. It's not literally 8 hours in a plane. It's actually only 5 hours in a plane. But I got a layover for 2 hours in Dallas. And then, And then the only good thing about it is when I go to Vancouver, the time zone, I gain 2 hours. And that's why I'm not going to arrive like really late at night. I only arrive at 9 p.m. So it's not too late for me. So then it's back to the Vancouver life. And, you guys can tell that my voice is a little bit hoarse, right? It just had a good time. I played soccer yesterday, the day before. We had paintball, just so many things to do. I went to karaoke. I don't know if I should post that up because you guys really want to hear me, see me sing Backstreet Boys? I don't think so, right? But I think the best thing is just being with people like-minded and being with people just discussing, talking, and seeing, when you discuss and talk, especially about the things that you're thinking about, to get other angles, to get other views about what you're thinking about also can set you back on track or help you to kind of expand your ideas to a new horizon, right? So that's why I had the thoughts of the week this week on leadership for the next generation. Right. And I think it's something that's important for all of us because I don't know about your countries, but a lot of the countries that I go to, a lot of the discussions is we don't really have another generation of leaders coming up, like up and coming leaders that are ready to take over head leading and such. And it's something that I've been thinking about a lot, but it's something that I really think we should take to the next level. But yeah, if anything, the way to preface this thoughts of the week, the thought in my head was, what would you rather have? Like, what would what would you give, or what would you sacrifice to make Providence successful? You know what I mean? What would you give? Right? And the thought in my head is, does it matter what I really, really think is the best way to do it? Or is it better to just sacrifice that and allow someone who really knows how to do it, or someone who's studying about it, to be able to lead it so that it could get done in a better way? But, there's a lot of thoughts in my mind, and I'm hoping that, just a lot of deep conversations I've had in the last 10 days. Either way. Also, a new talk on Thursday night. Last week's Espresso with Sky was Faith versus Works. Thank you so much for all of you that have liked and posted a comment on there. Would love to engage more with the audience. So if you haven't seen it yet, go to the Espresso with Sky YouTube channel, and that's for newcomers. Go ahead and look at that, and you'll be able to see videos made for newcomers. You can show to your newcomers too. And it's kind of cool though, because even here in Houston, some people will show the videos to kind of give an introduction to the newcomers of what their next topic's going to be about. So I am really thankful that there are people gaining and benefiting from those videos too. Okay. All right. So let's get this show started, starting with the member artists from around the world. So who is today's featured artist of the day? Today's featured artist, I'm going to pay some homage to the Somni Boys, because I just spent an amazing time. These guys are awesome. Great guys to chill with. And before I leave Houston, I'm going to leave this as my last song before I leave out. This song is going to be the newest one that just came out. That is Rise Up. And that's from the Somni Boys in America. And that song dropped last week. And then we have Die Wings from Korea with We're Going Up Now. And then we'll end things off with J Root from the Paper Music Associates in Korea with World of Us featuring Seungyeong.
Yeah, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan, I gotta be new, gotta be great, I only gotta win this thing, fixing mistakes, fix who I am, all I wanna do is change, gotta be brave, gotta be tough, no more time for delaying, it's just training, all those times of pain, off, pushing my limits, only God, I'm trying to be better, I'm trying to feel God, enemies watching, they want you to fall, but you have to be better, you have to give it your all, every day I make myself, but I know it's not easy, this is the life I chose and I know my spirit's breathing, the battle has only begun and I may take damage, but if I fall, all I know how to do one thing, rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, belt to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying, everyone thinks I lost, but now I'm turning Super Saiyan, I'm Goku turning Super Saiyan, I'm charged up, now I'm playing, on the mount like Sinai, I can live with God like Wi-Fi, receive the word, always praying, spiritual path where I'm staying, everyone thinks I lost, but I'm always with him, so you know I'm prevailing, protecting myself from Satan, armed with the truth, now my angels will shoot like, now I'm at my truest form, I'm trying to really be the greatest, the power level can't contain it, my energy is never draining, look how far we have made it, unlocking levels never hesitated, there's no trying, you just do it or don't, so fix your thoughts instead, everybody makes mistakes, just gotta take notes, can afford to do it again, life is so easy, if you just do what is right and just follow what's real, victory becomes true skill, gotta stay on course, time to kill. Time to rise and shine, thinking of the past and never forget. God is Lord, by your side, holding your hand, dry your eyes, trust in Lord every night and day. He'll never let you go, don't fall away. Be bold, be brave, and with all your heart, love the Lord to the end of time. Rise up to the challenge, armed with the word in action, held to the truth, fasten, shield of faith in one hand, sword of the spirit I'm slaying, no mercy I'm praying. Everyone thinks I lost, but I'm turning Super Saiyan.
새로운 자유로움이 내 안에 차올라 Nobody can describe me, I know who I am 정해진 운명 따윈 믿지 않아, I don't care All limitations are set by yourself 내 길이 전에 오늘 정해져 있는 길이라고 누가 말했어요 어느 길을 가든 내가 선택하면 가는 거지 앞에도 이 두 가지 길 중에
배우고 알았으니 자유로움이 벅차오르니 날개가 돋아난 내 I'm free 거기에 도착해 내 덕분에
I can't help loving myself 나만의 diamonds 나만의 crown One who wants to wear the crown Wear the crown, then wear the crown
We're going up now going, that's right Keep moving, that's right You ready? Be strong We're going up now Keep going, that's right Keep moving, that's right You ready? Be strong We're going up now
뭣도 모르고 뭣도 모르는 것들 법을 모르니 덫에 걸린 적들 있지 난 달러만을 찾지 않아 성공 법지 just do it 내 자신을 kill it 매일 새로 태어나 아닌 그냥 자연스럽게 그리 살지 정해 아니 연속된 굴레에서 벗어나 새롭게 깨어나
그냥 나를 집비틀 그리던 좀 더 예쁜 톤으로 좀 더 나를 튀어나고 만들어 myself 다 들어오른 말은 내 때를 바꿔도 Call me on the 홀로서 뭐야 너도 별나가고 싶다며 그럼 너부터 만든다며 눌러봐 새롭지가 매다매 졸았어도 밤에도 빛나는 다이아몬드
Just a word
And there it is. That is J Root from PMA in Korea with World of Us, and that's featuring Seung Young. Before that was Die Wings from Korea with their latest single, We're Going Up Now. And of course, Somebody Boys from America. They are from Houston, Texas. I just spent a lot of awesome time with them. And that song was Rise Up, and that dropped. I think that dropped this week. Right on Sunday, I believe. Yeah, last week. It was last week. But super grateful and thankful for all the hard work they're doing, just dropping more and more songs out there. Okay, so let's get into news going on around the world. And those of you joining us for the first time, world news, such an important thing. And this is one of the things that when it comes to watching TV, this is the one thing Sunseem does watch, because he looks at the news to see what to pray about. He looks at the news to see what God is doing, and he looks at the news to see, the things that he can comfort God into. And I hope that we too can, know and pray. Like, we got to pray while knowing the situation going around the world. And even when we start praying about Russia and the Ukraine situation, as we're doing for this prayer condition, the one good thing is when you watch the news, you can see what God is doing. Right? See God answering the prayers and whatnot. So I hope it's something that we will keep as an important thing in our hearts and our minds when it comes to world news. All right. So let's start off with the Russia-Ukraine situation, the crisis, and what has happened over the last 24 hours. And the EU remains unable to agree on ending supplies of Russian oil and gas, Germany's economy minister says. So ministers are discussing an embargo on Russian oil, but Hungary has made it clear it will block consensus. Germany says it would not be ready to block Russian gas, but could bear a phased-in oil embargo and revenue, because, think about this, revenues from all the supplies of oil and gas, which is millions of euros a day, are used to fund Russia's war in Ukraine. Also, some 100 people, we talked about this yesterday, 100 people evacuated from a besieged steel plant in the southern city of Mariupol. They're due to arrive in Ukraine-held areas, and hundreds more civilians remain trapped there, and President Zelensky has said he hopes further evacuations can take place. So when it comes to oil and gas and an embargo for Europe, it's really hard because, like we talked about this before, 40% of the oil and gas comes from Russia. So how reliant are Germany and Hungary on Russian gas? Well, ministers of European Union countries are discussing how to lessen their dependence on energy supplies from Russia as a result of its invasion of Ukraine. Now, Germany has acknowledged EU nations are still divided on a possible Russian embargo. The energy minister says his country could handle an oil ban by the end of the year, but not a ban on gas. And Hungary has reiterated that it opposes a ban on either fuel. So as you can see from the graph, there's a graph that I talked about the other day. It shows that Germany is like they most rely on Russian gas and oil more than any other country in the EU. Right? So Germany is the top importer of Russian gas in 2020, buying like 42.6 billion cubic meters of oil and gas, right? And Hungary too was one of Russia's top gas buyers, taking in 11.6 billion cubic meters that year. So the European Union as a whole bought 41% of its gas from Russia in 2019. Now, the U.S. is now accusing Russia of depravity and brutality. So the U.S. Defense Department has accused Russian President Vladimir Putin of acting with depravity in his invasion of Ukraine. Spokesman John Kirby became visibly emotional as he asked how anyone moral could justify the atrocities committed by Russia. But Russia's ambassador to the U.S., Anatoly Antonov, has rejected the accusation, and he described Mr. Kirby's comment as offensive and unacceptable. Ukrainian President Zelensky said on Friday he was still open to peace talks with Putin, but he said also there's a high risk they could collapse amid Russian aggression. So speaking to Polish media, Zelensky said he wanted to meet Putin because a single man decides everything in Russia, but the destruction left by Russian forces in occupied areas has made any discussion tenuous, right? So Russia has forcibly deported large numbers of civilians across the border since it invaded the country in February, and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said in an interview published on Saturday that more than 1 million people have been evacuated from Ukraine to Russia since the war began in February. And Lavrov told China's state news agency Xinhua that it included some 120,000 foreigners, in addition to hundreds of thousands of people from the Russian-backed breakaway regions of eastern Ukraine, Donetsk, and Luhansk. Ukraine's deputy prime minister told the BBC that Moscow has attempted to trade Ukrainian civilians for Russian military prisoners, a move forbidden by the Geneva Convention. And Russia confirmed on Friday that its military had conducted an airstrike in Ukraine's capital during a visit by the UN Secretary General. Now, journalist Vera Hirsch was killed in the attack, the first of its kind in Kyiv in nearly 2 weeks. And after the residential building she lived in was hit by a missile. Russia's defense ministry said it had deployed high-precision long-range air-based weapons to target a missile factory in Kyiv. So that is kind of what is going on over the last 24 hours. So let's move into some other world news. Let's go to the Philippines. Big fire kills 8 already, including 6 children, after a fire tore through scores of homes near the Philippines capital, Manila, local officials have said. Now, the blaze, which started around 5 a.m. local time on Monday, also destroyed 80 homes. And it started on the second floor of a house in a crowded settlement inside the sprawling campus of the University of the Philippines in Quezon City. Now, when I went to go visit there, that's actually where I stayed. But it started at a university. The cause of the blaze is unknown. A senior fire officer told AFP News agency that it took nearly 2 hours to extinguish the blaze. The Philippines is one of the most densely populated countries in the world, and its capital has a large number of residents per square kilometer. Now, Metro Manila, the region which comprises the capital and other cities, including Quezon, has a population of about 13 million people. So thousands of people live in overcrowded communities where fires are common. If we go over to Haiti, this is something that we've heard about last year when there was like 16 missionaries that were held captive by Haiti gangs. Well, there's another kidnapping, a kidnapping of a diplomat for ransom. So the Dominican Republic has urged Haiti to do everything in its power to ensure the safe release of one of its diplomats who was kidnapped on Friday. The trade attaché at the Dominican embassy in Port-au-Prince, Carlos Guillen, was seized by gang members while he was traveling to neighboring Dominican Republic. Dominican officials said that the 400 Mawozo gang was behind the kidnapping. And of course, we also know that this gang is infamous for these kidnapping of foreigners and demanding high ransoms. And like we said, this is the same gang that kidnapped 16 U.S. citizens and a Canadian who were Christian aid ministry missionaries, right? And the gang was demanding like $1 million per person. So the missionaries and their families all managed to regain their freedom 2 months later, and Christian aid ministry said 12 of them had escaped their captors and that 5 others had been released earlier, and no one was sure if any ransom was paid. But Dominican newspaper said that their diplomat, Mr. Guillen, had been traveling from the Haitian capital, Port-au-Prince, by road to Jemani, a city across the border in the Dominican Republic, when contact with him was lost. And the Dominican ambassador in Haiti, Farouk Castillo, said his colleague had been kidnapped in the Croix de Bouquet area east of the capital. Now, Croix de Bouquet is, I totally butchered that name, is a stronghold of 400 Mawozo, which security sources describe as the largest criminal gang in Haiti. Now, Dominican media published a photo of the kidnapped diplomat and reported that the gang had demanded $500,000 for his release. And this is not like uncommon, right? Kidnappings for ransom are thought to be one of the main sources of income for the powerful criminal group. And while it's the abductions of foreigners which have received much of the media attention, Haitians have been the main victims. And according to Haiti's Center for Analysis and Research on Human Rights, more than 1,200 people were kidnapped in 2021. With only 81 of the victims foreign nationals. So 10% of the kidnappings were collective abductions, meaning gang members were abducting groups of people. And in some instances, armed men have stormed churches, right, during church services and kidnapped clergy in the middle of Mass. So violent crime has worsened in Haiti since the assassination in July of President Jovenel Moise. A month ago, thousands of people took to the streets to demand the late president's successor in office, Ariel Henry, to do more to combat Haiti's criminal gangs. So, we're really, really hoping that a lot of this gets fixed more than anything else, right? And I'm really hoping, too, that, wow, it's so sad. Like even some of the talks I had over the last couple of days, when we hear about some of the terrible things that happen to people, in churches and all these other different things, it kind of puts into context how bad our situations really are, You know what I mean? Like, you're like, I thought mine was bad. When you hear other people like, oh my gosh, mine wasn't really that bad, and I'm complaining over something so small. But when you look at this, it's crazy to see that these types of things are actually happening around the world, right? And we need to be the ones as the brides of this history to be praying for them. Yeah. All right, so let's get into some sporting news, okay? So NBA playoffs are going on right now. Round 2 has just started, which means semifinals for the conference semifinals. So, first game, we had the Milwaukee Bucks facing off against the Boston Celtics. This is going to be a great series. Milwaukee wins 101-89. They're up 1-0. Giannis Antetokounmpo with 24 points, 13 rebounds, 12 assists, a triple-double in the victory. Jason Tatum with 21 points, 6 rebounds, 6 assists. And if you watch that game, Boston was just getting bullied by Milwaukee. Their team is just that much bigger than them. In the second game on the in the Western Conference, we had the Golden State Warriors against the Memphis Grizzlies, 2 versus 3. Golden State ekes out a win, 117-116, even though Draymond Green, their best defensive player, was basically kicked out in the fourth quarter. So great job to Golden State. Jordan Poole, 31 points, 8 rebounds, 9 assists. And Ja Morant with 34 points, 9 rebounds, and 10 assists. Over in soccer news in EPL action, Everton upsets Chelsea 1-0. Tottenham defeats Leicester City 3-1. Son, the South Korean player, Son Heung-min, scores 2 goals in that effort. And Arsenal beats West Ham 2-1. Was it Arsenal or was it? Let me guess. I actually thought it was the other way around. I'm going to just double check this so that no one gets the wrong information when it comes to. I thought there was another. What do you call it? No, it was true. Arsenal did beat West Ham 2-1. In Spain, in the La Liga, Barcelona defeats Mallorca 2-1. In Italy action, Juventus defeats Venezia 2-1, and AC Milan defeats Fiorentina 1-0. In golf, some cool news. The Mexico Open, it was John Ram, which was last year's #1 player of the year. He's from Spain, but he basically trained and he grew up in America. He, in the final round, breaks a 4-way tie for the lead. He pulls away in the 14th hole by hitting a birdie and shoots a 2-under 69 to win by 2 shots. He is the #2 player in the world right now. And in this event, he was the only player in the top 15 playing in this tournament. It's kind of a weaker pool, but this is his first victory in 17 starts, right? And this is the longest he's gone without a victory, but his 14th victory worldwide. And congratulations to John Ram. Great player. Either way. So that is the top 3 news in sports and current news from around the world. Hope you guys really enjoyed and were able to gain something from that. Which means we're going to get into a time of praise and worship, right? A time to give praise and worship to the Holy Trinity. We're going to start off with connection. And then the Lord has come back to life. And then we'll end things off with an oldie but a goodie. This is love, forgiveness, and mercy. So as one body of the Morning Star Drive, let's spend this time giving praise, honor, and glory to the Holy Trinity.
Two people may connect just by brushing by. But if skin brushes skin, will they just merely connect? That will make them turn into lovers. If clothing brushes clothes, it could last for 10 years. But if it's skin to skin, 100 years.
the dark grave, our Lord came to life. He won against Satan. He defeated the wicked. He has conquered death and darkness forever. He has come to life. As for you, brides of this time, you have come back to life again. Now as one, all together with the Lord, we will love God the Holy Spirit, celebrating this wedding banquet together for 1,000 years. For you and me, this is a time of love, a history of joy eternally. We will live in heaven's city of gold, and with the Lord here, we will live as His bride. We will serve the Lord our God. We will live with the Spirit, being inspired. We will act. It's time to resurrect. It's a new history. We've resurrected, triumphant, glorious. We have gained victory. We have gained victory.
All God has made, heaven and earth, humankind, in His perfect love, God created them. Our God is love, He forgives, He's merciful.
God, He gives heaven's word once again today.
The Holy Spirit moves our hearts once again today.
We are saved by the Lord once again today. Even though you have fallen short, they will make up for what you lack. Train your heart, live with love, mercy and grace. Live like this, live
heart. Wide as the skies, high as heaven, with love and grace. Up above, they rule with love over this whole world. Even though you have fallen short, they will make up for what you lack. Train your heart, live with love, mercy and grace. Live like this, live with love, rapture each day, like a God, Spirit Son. Make your heart wide as the skies, high as heaven, with love and grace. Up above, they rule with love over this whole world. Up above, they rule with love over this whole world. Up above, they rule with love over this whole world.
And that was Love, Forgiveness, and Mercy. I remember that was one of my favorite songs when it first came out, and we sang this song all the time. Now it's more like Everything I Am Is Because of Your Love, What Faith Is Given. Like, those are the ones that are the big ones coming out right now. And I'm sure as the future, as more and more songs come in the future, we're going to have more things to like, oh, this is my favorite song right now too. All right. So, before that was The Lord Has Come Back to Life. That's a new one that just came out on for the English, for English songs. It's a newer one for Sunseam songs that came out. And of course, we had Connection before that. Okay, so let's get into the word study for today. And of course, every single Tuesday, we do get into kind of scriptures, the Bible backgrounds, history background, political situations, and we want to know the scriptures and what we're looking into, and it gives us a better idea and context of the books that we read, and it makes us more interested, and I'm hoping it does. Okay, now today, I was thinking like, could it be Matthew? We've done that many times. Could have done the book of Acts, which is a really, really interesting one I wanted to do. But I was like, Numbers. When will we ever get a chance to do the book of Numbers? And that came out in this week's scripture too. So today I'm going to go over the book of Numbers. Right? So let's start off with, we're going to get into the book of Numbers, which is it the third book? I think it's the third book. Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. No, Numbers. Numbers is the third book. Okay, so the Pentateuch. Now, this is something that's really, really important. Pentateuch, penta meaning 5, right? And it's the first 5 books in the Bible. The Pentateuch is, Genesis, Exodus, Numbers, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, or whichever one it is. It's one of the first 5 books. Okay, and in universal Jewish and Christian tradition, it attributes the authorship of the book of Numbers to Moses, right? Moses is the central figure within the book, and in at least 2 instances in the book of Numbers, it mentions Moses recording these events by the Lord's command. And you'll find that like in chapter 33 and 36, okay? And the name Numbers is a translation of arithmoi, so like arithmetic, right? But arithmoi from the Septuagint. Now, the Septuagint, remember you guys, I talked about this history before. It is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, Okay, and this is the book mainly that probably Jesus and the disciples were using, and it was titled this as Arithmoi or Numbers because the book contains many statistics, population counts, tribal and priestly figures, and other numerical data. So the Hebrew name comes from the first sentence of the book and means in the desert of. So when you think about the Hebrew name for it, it means in the desert of. Okay, and it's perhaps an even more accurate description of the book's contents, which follows the Israelites through almost 40 years of wandering in the desert. Okay, so now we know that this book of Numbers is following, is basically that time of 40 years in the desert with Moses and the Israelites, okay? So where are we? Well, the events of the book begin in the second year after the Israelites departed Egypt as they camped at Mount Sinai, and we're going to say roughly around 1444 BC, and you'll find that in Numbers chapter 1, verse 1. Now, the narrative ends 38 years later in the plains of Moab by the Jordan opposite Jericho, and you'll see that in chapter 36, verse 13. And in 1406 BC, that's going to be the ending of it. So we're looking roughly 1444 to 1406 BC, which is a 38-year span in which this book was made. Now, Numbers records the people's long wandering in the desert of Sinai, their time at the oasis at Kadesh Barnea, and their eventual arrival at the banks of the Jordan River across from the Promised Land. Now, the Lord directed the message of Numbers toward the younger generation, children of the former slaves who escaped through the Red Sea, except for Joshua, Caleb, and Moses, the older generation. Now, everyone 20 years old or older at the time of the first census died before the completion of Numbers due to their disobedience and disbelief, right? So we know that the people went into the land to scout the land, and then 10 of the people who came back gave negative news, and then they had to wander in the desert for 40 years, and that generation died off. And then the new generation, the second generation, was the one that went into the promised land, the land of Canaan, right? So why is this book so important? Well, Numbers, it takes the readers on a long and winding path through a desert of excruciating detail. So the book records census results for all 12 tribes, not once, but twice. It documents priestly instructions for handling the Ark of the Covenant and the tabernacle. It even spells out the placement of the tribes when they camped. But through it all, we cannot doubt God's unfailing direction over the nation. So as a history of the nation not yet established in the land promised them long ago, the book of Numbers unveils significant events, sometimes referenced later in Scripture. Joshua and Caleb alone among the 12 spies encouraged Israel to take possession of the land, and Moses struck a rock and water. You know that when Moses struck the rock and water spouted forth, right? That's when he made another big mistake by striking it. And also you'll see the event when Moses lifted up a bronze serpent on a pole so that believing Israelites might be healed of their snake bites. And of course, in this book of Numbers, you'll also find the story of Balaam was rebuked by his donkey, the talking donkey. And that's all in the book of Numbers. So it's really, really interesting, some of these stories there. So what is the main idea of the book of Numbers? Well, it's basically the people of Israel tested God's patience, and he in turn tested their endurance and faithfulness. So though the people failed many times, God showed his own faithfulness by his constant presence leading the way through a cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. So more than just a history lesson, the book of Numbers reveals how God reminded Israel that he does not tolerate rebellion, complaining, and disbelief without invoking consequences. And he taught his people how to walk with him, not just with their feet through the wilderness, but with their mouths in worship, hands in service, and lives as witnesses to the surrounding nations. He was their God, they were his people, and he expected them to act like it. Okay, so let's go a little bit deeper into the books itself. Okay, so there are about 5 main characters in the book of Numbers, and it starts obviously, well, we'll say 6 if you include God, right? So God is like the most important character, obviously, but the human characters, there were 5. So Moses, obviously, the prophet, human leader of the nation of Israel, and chief spokesperson for God, right? Aaron, which is Moses' brother and the high priest of Israel. You'll also see Eleazar, which is Aaron's son, who takes his place when Aaron dies. Balaam, we talked about the diviner for hire from far away, and he's hired by Israel's enemies to curse God's people, and then donkey talks to him. And then last but not least, we have Joshua, which is Moses' aide who spies on the people of Canaan, and God selects him to be Moses' successor. So what is the key themes? What is Numbers about? Okay, so when you start to read the book of Numbers, yes, there's a bunch of weird numbers and census and all these other different statistics in there, but there are a lot of weird happenings along the journey, right? Including the episode with the talking donkey with Balaam. But the main focus of the book is Israel's repeated rebellion and God's repeated mercy and discipline on his people, right? That's going to be the main focus. So if we were to choose just one verse to sum up the key themes in this book, it would be Numbers 14:11, when God tells Moses, "How long will this people spurn me? And how long will they not believe in me, despite all the signs which I have performed in their midst?" Okay, so let's take a look at some of the key themes. The first one is human rebellion. So the Israelites rebel against God and Moses several times in the book of Numbers. They complain about the food, complain about the water, complain that they don't, that they're getting crushed by their enemies. They complain about Moses, and and even make death threats towards Moses too. So there's human rebellion. And then another theme is divine punishment. Right? So we're going to kind of go in order. It goes rebellion and then divine punishment. When the people complain, God hears them and it doesn't go well. Right? The book of Numbers has stories of God killing rebellious Israelites with fire, plague, and snakes. And sometimes Moses calls to God for help when the people turn on him. And sometimes God punishes them directly. And then we move to divine provision. Right? So even the people prove to be rebellious, God in the end extends mercy to them. And rather than killing off the whole nation in the wilderness, he waits for the rebellious generation to die and preserves the younger people. Now, he continues to provide manna, that mysterious bread from heaven, and he even prevents Balaam, the pagan prophet, from cursing the people. And then we have laws, more laws, right? And, you've got to understand, this is still in the Pentateuch. So this is the Torah, right? This is the first 5 books. And the book of Numbers is a string of episodes from Israel's journey, and the author punctuates many of these episodes with a new set of laws given to the people. Numbers doesn't have the big bulky sets of laws we see in the latter half of Exodus, Leviticus, and almost the whole of Deuteronomy, but there's still plenty of rules in this book too. Of course, you're also going to see Moses' leadership. So Moses deals with the pressures of leading a new nation, and at one point asking God why he has to bear the burden of leading them to Canaan. So he feels like an unappreciated nanny forced to carry more than 600,000 squalling brats across the wilderness, right? And Moses tells God early in the book, it was like, I can't carry all these people by myself. The burden's too heavy for me. If this is how you're going to treat me, just go ahead and kill me. And this is what Moses actually said to God. And that's in Numbers chapter 11, verse 14 and 15. Like, this is how he felt. This was his moment of leadership. And I'm sure many people in a leadership position kind of felt like that too. So time and time again, God makes it clear to the people that Moses is his chosen prophet and Aaron is his chosen priest. However, due to an episode of Moses' disobedience, he is not permitted to enter Canaan either. Right? And last but not least, we'll see that the last theme, a major theme in this book, is God's covenant with Abraham. So back in Genesis, God made a pact with Abraham saying that one day his descendants would inherit the land of Canaan. And through those people, all the nations of the world would be blessed. So, God promises to bless those who bless Abraham and curse those who curse Abraham. And the name Abraham only shows up once in the book of Numbers. But if you look closely, you'll see that God is at work fulfilling his promise to Abraham through the book of Numbers, right? And, when you start to read and study Numbers, you got to kind of keep an eye on what the book says about the land of Canaan, what happens when someone tries to curse the people God chooses, and any hints of a king coming from Israel. Okay? So, if you kind of zoom out, look at the book of Numbers in context, it's not a standalone book. Like, Numbers is, it's the 4th book of the Pentateuch, and Israel's 5-movement origin story, which, right, the first 5 books is their origin story. And reading Numbers without at least familiarizing yourself with the previous 3 books, Genesis, Exodus, and Leviticus, is kind of like tuning into the 4th season of a TV series. You're not going to have any clue what's going on. right? You need to know what was happening before. It's like part 4 of a series. So Genesis, God makes a promise to Abraham and the patriarch of Israel, and God specifically promised that descendants will be given the land of Canaan, right? And the nations will be blessed through him and whatnot. Okay, and then the start of Exodus, the nation of Israel is grown, but they've been enslaved by their Egyptian overlords. And then God sends his people a prophet Moses, who speaks on God's behalf to both Israel and Pharaoh. And then God frees Israel and leads them to a mountain, the wilderness. Okay, and then God makes a special agreement on Mount Sinai, and then they promise to follow his commands, and he promises to dwell among them, giving them his blessing and protection. And then the book of Leviticus focuses on how a nation of mortals can cohabitate with the God of heaven. And then Numbers picks up the story right as the Israelites have been at Sinai for a year. Okay, so you kind of get to see that when you look at the book in context, it's really interesting that you look at how it's kind of flowing from the 3 previous books before it, right? And I hope it's something that we can understand. Like when you start to read Numbers, you're going to see that in chapters 1 through 10 is basically them preparing to leave Sinai. And then in the next 2 chapters, it's about from Sinai to Paran, right? And basically, this is not a very pleasant journey because there's a lot of complaining about God and Moses, and then God sends fire and a plague, and then Moses' brother Aaron and Miriam, brother and sister, speak out against him, and then Miriam temporarily has his leprosy. It's not really good, right? And then you have the next 6 chapters where Israel rejects the Lord, and then the next 2 chapters is basically from Paran to Moab, and then chapter 22 to 36 for about another 14 chapters there. Israel settles across the land of Canaan. So it's you're going to kind of get this, you'll understand it better when you read it. When you read the first 5 books of the Bible, which is super important for the beginning of history of Israel. So kind of Numbers is showing us how this holy, omnipotent, omniscient God dwells with his people. And then Israel rebels against God, and even Moses disobeys him, but God is faithful to bring this nation to the promised land. And then God keeps his promises, right? The promise he made to Abraham in Genesis, along with his promises to bless and punish Israel. So although few of us are in the nation of Israel's position today, the stories in Numbers still serve as a really good example to us. And then Paul teaches that the events in Numbers are recorded for our instruction, that we may endure and escape temptation, right? So I hope it's something that we can really look at a lot more strongly and understand that much better, okay? So I'm really hoping that you guys, all of us here, I know that a lot of the books, like after Exodus is like, right? Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, sometimes it's just like, it's so taxing and tedious. But sometimes it's good to see the whole picture behind it, and then we'll be able to read it a lot better too. Okay, so as we do on every Tuesday, this is kind of a study of the scriptures, and I hope you guys really, really enjoyed this time, and it makes you want to read the book of Numbers even more. All right, so what does that mean, guys? Now that we have this word study out of the way for today, we're going to get into the song of choice. What is the song of choice for today? It is Korean Tuesday, and I'm going to choose an old school song that when in like 2002 to 2007, I was really into Korean music, not K-pop, like real Korean music, not the K-pop style. And this is a duet from Sonya and Tim. Okay, and this song is called "Tears Coming Down." Okay, so it's kind of one of those sad love songs where you lose someone you love, but it's got a crazy music video. And the music video is so sad. And during this time, there were so many music videos at this time that made people cry. But this is from Sonya and Tim, and this song is called "눈물이나," which "눈물" is your tears, "ina" means to come out. It keeps coming out, right? So this is a duet between the two on this Korean Tuesday. Hope you guys will enjoy. This song is "Tears Coming Down."
날 혼자 둔 채로 돌아설 수 없죠. 그댈 그리다 긴 하루 써버린 내가 걱정돼서 못하겠죠. 보내줘
내 곁에 행복한 날들이 자꾸 생각나서 모습 밟혀서 먼 길을 가다 후회되겠죠. 내게 미안하겠죠. 또 다른 사랑 찾아가라는 말은 말아요. 그댈 생각하면 나도 몰래 눈물이 나. 돌아올 수 없어도 누군가를 사랑하게 된대도
그댈 보내주느니
보다 가슴 아픈 걸
잡을 수가 없느니 언젠가 그대가 새로운 다른 사람 만나
나를 닮은 이별에 눈물을 흘리면 그때 알까요? 내 슬픔을 볼까요? 또 다른 사랑 찾아가라는 말은 말아요. 그댈 생각하면 나도 몰래 눈물이 나. 돌아올 수 없어도 기억해줘요. 누군가를 사랑하게 된대도 다른 사랑 찾아가라는 말은 말아요. 왜 그댄 내맘 볼 수조차 없는 건지. 돌아올 수 없어도 언제까지나 나 그댈 위해 살아갈게요.
그댈 보내주느니
보다 가슴 아픈 걸 잡을 수가 없느니 이젠 늦이 사느니.
And that was Sonia and Tim singing that duet "눈물이나," which means tears come down or tears keep coming out. You guys got to watch. I'll find the music video and I'll put it in the description if you want to watch the music video for it. It's really sad. It's so sad. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Like, way back then, you're talking like 15 years ago. Like, people were crying during that one too. But really, I don't know what it is. Koreans have this ability to touch people's 심정 really deeply, whether it's through songs, K-dramas, whatever it is. But yeah, it's a really, really good one. So yeah, I'll post that video in the description below. Okay, so let's get into the final portion for today, which is thoughts of the week on the next generation of leadership. When I say second gen leadership, I'm not really saying like the second generation of Providence. I'm talking the next generation of leadership. And these are some of the thoughts that I had talking with other leaders. And it was really cool. Like, even at one point, there's three of us all around my generation. And we were all head leaders. We all were in leadership for a long time, running for Providence for like 15, 20 years and such too. And, we were just talking and discussing all the things that we went through. And we also talked about even though we may not have been the best leaders, but the great part is that we were able to like look back on it now and say, oh, if I had to do it again, I wouldn't do it that way. Which means, we look at our experiences and we're able to gain from them and help, right? And look and say, ooh, that's the same thing I did. I probably wouldn't have done it this way. And I think it's a good thing for leaders sometimes to take a sabbatical. And sabbatical, I think I should have taken this a lot earlier, but in Christianity, there's a sabbatical is for every, I think every pastor gets to take a sabbatical, right? Oh, they don't have to, but like universities do this, and some businesses do this too, right? So a sabbatical leave is you take like sometimes a year off work, right? Because you're just burnt out, or you're too into something that you can't really see the full picture, right? So a sabbatical is, usually done for like people in academics, okay? So it's a way to give professors a break from teaching. These are like, they're given a year of leave every 7 years to pursue research or just take time away to refresh, right? And basically it took, like they've been doing this in the academic profession for like 150 years before it even went to another field, right? And even if you look at today, it's still only like 5% of companies offer a paid sabbatical, right? And it's interesting. There's no obligations. You could do whatever you want. You can work somewhere else. It's just a place to leave. So it's interesting. Some people who are taking a sabbatical will go work at another university for a year, right? And they're making double pay, but it's different from what they're doing right now, right? So there's tremendous benefits in this when it comes to like workplace productivity, and you offer it to employees. They worked for a company for a certain amount of time. Legally, there's no minimum requirement, but it's usually at least 5 years. And there's no minimum requirement for how long a sabbatical should be. A sabbatical, like the Sabbath every 7 years, right? But it's not a vacation. There are certain considerations to keep in mind for a sabbatical, and sometimes training or covering duties or other things that you don't usually have to think about for shorter breaks. And to get the most out of this type of leave, sabbaticals are usually at least 4 weeks and as long as up to a year, right? And they are fully paid. In most cases, it's fully paid. Okay, so the benefits is just you get reduced stress. You're reducing stress, depression, anxiety, all these other different types of things, and it lowers the amount of burnout that actually happens. You have freedom to pursue other things, right? And it's like an opportunities for skills development. And I think this most important one, I believe, is it provides time for inner reflection. What did I just go through? What can I do better? And, it's something I do believe is a great thing that leaders should be doing, that if you're too into something, you're just way too into it, you can't really see the big picture. You forget it, or you forget to see, you can't really see what you're doing or how you're doing it. But a sabbatical allows you this time to reflect and move forward without burnout, reflect and change yourself too. And even for myself, it's been like this for 8 months for me, like not really having a mission, because it's since the end of August. Now it's all the way the end of April, beginning of May. Yeah, I've done it for 8 months already, right? And a lot of things I'm able to think in my mind. Ooh, you know what? Next time, I'm not going to do this. And it kind of calms the heart and the soul. But through this time, I'm really able to think about, what is one of the biggest issues that we're dealing with in like smaller countries, like not like Korea. I'm not sure about Japan and Taiwan because they're really, really big. But all the other countries I've been to, it's the pipeline of leadership that's coming next. Like who's coming next? If let's just say right now, let's think about this. Right now, if your head leader had to leave, who would take over? Are they qualified? Right? And I was even talking about this with some other people too, is what makes them qualified? You know what I mean? Like we don't even have a qualified. It's just like, oh, they've been assistant leader or they've been running Providence for 10 years. And that honestly, that's not qualification. That's just their work ethic. Oh, they've been running, right? That's work ethic. They've been putting in a lot of effort. That's work ethic and attitude. It's not about leadership. Leadership is actually a skill, right? And the more and more I think about it, we have a lot of times where your leader steps down, or they have to step down, or they got to start working, they're having a baby, whatever it is. When that happens, it's kind of like, oh no, who do we put there next? And then we just kind of next man up, right? Next person up. Oh, well, this person's been really working hard, so let's put this person in. And it's really unfortunate, I would say, because it's not so much about the want. The wanting, there's some people out there who want to do it, right? And I would say that's less and less now, especially with the younger generations. But it's even more so, it's about the skill. Because how many people want to like be in the NBA? They don't have the skill. How many people want to become like a millionaire, but they don't have the skill, the know-how? And I see that one of the biggest things that is stopping a lot of people from entering into full-time Providence is they lack the confidence. They don't feel that they're worthy. And I'm going to be super honest, and we would have to just say, yeah, that's true. They're not qualified and skilled enough. And you're like, well, isn't that mean? It's like, no, it's not said in a mean way. It's just that someone who's becoming a head leader should be trained to be a head leader, right? They should have the skills to counsel, the skills to lecture, the skills to preach, the skills to manage their time and schedule. Like, there is a skill that's out there that allows you to become a better leader, right? Like, even when I talk to some leaders now, because I look at myself in the past, it's like, man, I was doing things I didn't even need to do, but I just wanted to be busy, right? And then the things that are really important, I didn't understand how to do it. And there's no one there to teach me about it. Or even when they did teach you about it, it was so basic, as in like, oh, before you meet this, make sure you pray. I'm like, okay, make sure you read the message. And then, right? And then what? Right? Is it just a natural thing? You're just going to, all of a sudden the word's going to come out. You're going to have every answer. And the answer is no way, right? One of the big things that I look at is we need to be able to be in a position. We want to make Providence and put Providence in a position where we can choose the best person. And what's the difference? Right now, we're choosing from what we have. It's from what we have right now. That's way different, right? So imagine you only have 3 people, and not none of them really want to be leaders, but they're running because there's no one else to do it, right? Which means you're not taking the best of the best. But imagine you have a school of like 10, 20, 30 people that want to be head leaders or whatever it is. And then in there, they're going to be working hard and striving to build their skills. And then from the 30 people who are working really hard, really want to do it, they are the ones that you can choose from, and you could choose the best character, most empathy, most this, can lecture, can preach. And then we all of a sudden have like this larger group. It's almost like looking at Harvard and these Ivy Leagues. Everyone wants to get in, and you have to take a test, and only the best of the best get into those Ivy League schools. Can you imagine if that was what it was like for Providence leadership? You know what I mean? Instead of I'm doing it because I want to do it. And honestly, wanting is the first part, but it's not everything, because after wanting, it's about skill, right? And I realize even for myself, so many things I lacked in skill. So many things I like, oh my gosh, I shouldn't have done it that way. Oh, why was I doing it that way? Oh man, I wish I knew, right? And that's basically what schooling is. Schooling is someone going through the experience, someone studying it through their life, and then being able to teach to the next generation, but putting it into a program so people are able to do it that much better or understand it in step by step, right? And I do think that is something that we have to think about is we need to be able to systematize making leadership like a real thing where you choose the best of the best. And there are some things like I'll tell you what I regret is like one of the things, this is not even my fault, but like I was living in the church in a small room. But if you think about that, it could be looked upon as, wow, that's so noble. But no, it's not. Because I'm going to tell you this. If you have your like full-time leaders living in churches in like conditions that are not ideal, people are looking at that and seeing their future, that if I become a head leader, then I'm going to live in a small room in a church. It actually backfires, right? It puts out an image that is not good about leadership, where these younger groups are like, why would I want to, I would love to do leadership, but man, look at my future. I'm going to live in a small box inside the church where people are constantly coming to me. I don't have any free time. I have no personal space. Why would you want to do that? You know what I mean? Why would you want to even be in that position? It makes no sense that you're giving a bad image to the next generation, and they're going to look at that and say, oh, I don't know if I want to do that. But let's just say the head leader has their own place. It's close to the church, but it's private. And they have, their private time. And they're healthy, and they're exercising, and they're this and they're that. And when you look at that, you're like, wow, I want to do that. And you see the head leader in a better light, in a better image. And I realized for myself is like, man, honestly, for myself, it was a kind of a tough situation because, we're not getting paid much. And I was living in New York, and rent was crazy, which took more than 50% of my salary, which is crazy, right? Tell me that's crazy. 50% of my salary. So I was dipping into my savings just to live every month. But we need to think about that in the long run. In the long run, how are we going to do this? Where we're kind of wondering, well, how come there's no new leadership? If even if you want a new leader, who's going to take over? And the answer is, that's true. Who will take over? Who's going to take over? And if we have no one in the pipeline, we have no schools or programs, or we have no one showing a better image of leadership in the future, what their future is going to be like. Yeah, look at Pastor Joe and the Lord's Church. We go there and we see a bright future. Is there anyone living in the church? Very few. Very few. Does Pastor Joe live at the church? Absolutely not. She does have a place where she can rest in case she does overnight, right? And that makes sense. However, it's wow, it's not her house. She has her own house, but in the event she needs to do overnights or whatever it is, wow, she has a place to sleep. Which means what? Which means we're like, whoa, how amazing. She has a place for her to go, privacy or private place where no one knows. And on top of it, she has a place to stay in the church in the times she needs that extra, to work overnight on a message or prayer or whatever it is. And that becomes something appealing. Wow. Oh, guess what? You can, there's a cafe at the church. Wow. I can't wait till we have a cafe. Right? Even we're talking to some of the church members here in Houston. They're like, they want to get a gym inside the church. If they get a gym inside the church, that's going to be crazy. I'd be like, wow, I can't wait. Who doesn't want a gym inside their church? And I was like, that's nuts. And, it's something that, we look at and we say, it's something you look forward to. It's something visionary. But it has to be the same thing when it comes to leadership in Providence. It's got to be visionary. Right? It can't be something where people looking at oh my gosh, I feel sorry for them. Imagine in America and Canada, we have a welfare system. If you don't make enough money, the government gives you money and, they support you for certain things. But think about this. Imagine your head leader is on welfare. Think about that. Isn't that embarrassing? I would be embarrassed. Right? As a head leader, I'd be like, no, I'll just take what I can get because we don't have enough money, whatever it is, right? But if I was a member, I'd be embarrassed. Oh my gosh, we can't even support our leader to the point that they have to be on welfare and the government has to support them because the church can't, right? And that's something wow, you know what? I can understand when it's small churches, but when it gets bigger and bigger, oh man, it shouldn't be like that. And we need to understand it at this level. Wow, how can we do this better? How can we make things happen in a better way? Right? And how can we change the image of leadership? How can we change the qualifications and the training, right? So that this new generation is not going to be oh my gosh, I'm inspired, but when I look at it, there's no way I want to be in the future leadership. And that's one thing we don't want to happen. Right? And we need to kind of think 5, 6, 10 steps ahead. What are we going to do to solve it right now? Or are we just going to keep doing it the same way? And that's the kind of question I gave up at the very beginning of today's podcast is, Does your opinion matter that much? Like, oh my gosh, you didn't do it the way that I wanted. Or like, I thought to myself, like, wow, does our opinion matter that much? Or is it better for someone who knows how to do it and just learn that and do it that way, even though it's so different and so foreign to us? You know what I mean? Is it worth it for you to give up your opinion or your discussion? And then the church becoming just amazingly healthy and strong community and love and all these other different and growing. Is it worth it? And the answer to me is absolutely it's worth it. It's so worth it, right? And it means it requires some people to be in charge of it, to study it, to research it, right? And, you know, it's really crazy because even in Providence, like whether myself or talking to other people, like you'll talk about things that are already proven by research and by experience. And sometimes leaders are like, no, we don't want to do it that way. And I'm like, why not? Right? It's proven. Don't you want your church to grow? Don't you want your church like, and sometimes it's, you know, I looked at myself like, wow, you know, sometimes we have to look at what is the best way to do it, even though it's something that's a little bit foreign or counterintuitive. But for me to reject it is to say that I know better than all this research and I know better than all this experience from dozens and dozens of decades and years, which is untrue. And I hope it's something that, you know, we can think about also about the future generations of leadership when it comes to Providence and what's going to happen within the next 20 years. Like I want to see leadership flourish and churches flourish in my lifetime. But at the current moment, it's not going to happen at the current moment. It's just not, right? All the signs are there culturally, organizationally, systematically, whatever it is. It's not going to work the way it is right now. And I'm sure many people agree. Right now, it's not going to work. But if we can think ahead of time in the future, I know that we're going to have a lot of differences and a lot of things that would say, you know what? We should be thinking about and studying about this more instead of just doing it according to what we think is right. It's not about what we think. It's about what is right. That's what truth is, right? Either way. So that is my thoughts of the week for today, this Tuesday, and I hope you guys really enjoyed it, which means as I sign off here, I am going to be going straight to the airport. So everyone, have an amazing and awesome time. I'll be on the, please pray for my flight, and then I'll see you guys again tomorrow in Vancouver on the Morning Star Drive on 117.8.
It's the Morning Star Drive 117.8. You soaring up with sky, now's the time, don't delay. I'm sitting in my ride and it's time to fly. So let's realign, just listen and fill your mind.
I'm burning with desire and the passion. Nobody can stop me when I'm like this. I got my head in the zone, you know. I'm on the morning